So I want to welcome you to the Collaborative Leadership webinar. So for those of you that weren't at the first, this is actually the first webinar session for our four-part series. So there's also the one on values-based leadership. And we have one next week up on partnership development. And the final one is more looking at community development. So this is the very primer, it's the very beginning type webinar, which really brings in some basic concepts that help build for the other webinars. So it's called Collaborative Leadership, and you'll see there it's presented by the CHSSN, and we're excited to be celebrating our 20th year anniversary this year, so that's fun. And the session is put on through our ERCC program, which is called the Enhancing Regional Community Capacity program, and it's funded through the Secretariat for Relations with English-Speaking Quebecers. Next slide. So what are we going to learn today? It is a webinar, so I'll make sure we keep within about 50 minutes to 1 hour. So we're going to go quickly through what is the CHSSN Community Leadership Program and why are we doing leadership development, what's the benefits and value of that. Given all the work that we do in the community sector, collaborative leadership is a topic that's discussed quite often. So we're just going to introduce the basic definitions of what we're talking about when we talk about collaborative leadership. We're going to then move on and we'll talk about some of the principles around collaborative leadership from a network perspective, given that we all work within networks. And we'll finish off by looking at what we're referring to as the collaboration spectrum. All right, so let's get started. So quickly, there's the map. You can see yourself in there. CASA is number, I don't know what number you are. We'll find it. You're number 17. So this is the ERCC map. So it just represents the leadership development program is destined to these organizations primarily on the map. So you can see yourself, and all the webinar series is offered to these organizations plus groups that are outside of our network as well. Just take a quick read through that. This whole series is developed based on the support that we provide around the implementing a community mobilization model, which is a broader community development model that all of the organizations on the map back in 2012, we got together with all the organizations and we developed a collective approach and vision for change in our communities. This was developed in 2012. And you will see there on the bottom right, under development principles, leadership development is identified as a key development principle. So it really puts an emphasis on us as individuals, and building our leadership skills is extremely important to the overall success and our ability to affect positive change in our communities. So there's a real emphasis on us as individuals as an asset, an important asset towards the long-term vitality of our English-speaking communities. So we put a big focus on understanding what is leadership development and helping us build our capacity and competencies in that area. Next. So here we are. We created a leadership development program. It's in collaboration with the University of Concordia. 2014, we've collaborated with two researchers in particular with the Applied Human Sciences Department. And we developed a formal program which defined community leadership within a minority community context, and in particular within our NPI program, so in relation to health and social services sector. It is available on our website. So if you guys ever want to look at it, it's quite interesting. A lot of the executive directors in particular participated in helping us design it. And there are 20 leadership competencies that are defined. And so this provides the framework and blueprint for us as we go forward in offering different training. It's very specific based on building our competencies and skills. Next. All right, so we're finished that stuff. Let's get into it. So I just want to start off. You can read the screen there and just look at the definition of what is collaborative leadership. So I think the first thing, we're working in community organizations, and obviously we're a minority community as well. So defining what it means at an individual level for us to be good collaborative leaders, it really is the act when we align and integrate across organizations and sectors for greater impact. So it means that, for example, in CASA's case, that CASA, yes, you would be doing programs and services where you may have less collaboration and partnerships with others, but there's a value system and an approach saying that you partner and you collaborate with other organizations and other sectors as a way to have greater impact in the work we're doing. That doing it alone, we'd have less impact. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits and drawbacks to collaborative leadership. But definitely integrating and aligning across organizations and sectors is really the whole concept around collaborative leadership. Here's just a nice example. So it's an example I took from the Community Learning Center initiative. So this is up in Morin Heights Elementary in Laurentians. So, you know, many of you maybe have done this before where you're looking at and mapping out the variety of organizations out, for example, on the Gaspé Coast. You know, what organizations are there? What are their mandates? And then you go about and talking about, you know, where might there be some alignment or similar mandates, or if you're working on youth or seniors, which organizations might there be some natural partnerships to create, both within the English and in the French-speaking communities. So that's an example of aligning across other sectors and a simple process that we all go through, whether we actually do a visual like this or not. But this was a mapping exercise that I thought quite interesting and a really nice visual. So this is where, you know, Jennifer, Kathy, and Meredith, if you guys wanted to use the chat function, we can. But we talk about, first of all, what are the benefits of a collaborative leadership? Because obviously it's not easy working with other organizations. It's not always easy working. It's not always easy working with and collaborating in our own family units at times. So it takes energy and effort. So we've got to always be reminded, you know, during those tough times, in order to stay resilient and focused on, you know, working with others, what are the benefits? What are the long-term benefits of doing this work? So I wrote down 3 that are pretty consistent in the literature. So if you're looking at, you know, what are the benefits of doing this work, here are some things that come up quite often. Obviously, you can see up top in the yellow, it prevents working in silos. So there's a whole bunch of information that talks about the benefits of working in silos, but quite honestly, we know we've talked lots about, you know, especially from a minority community perspective. Yes, we need to collaborate and work internally within our own community, but how important it is to work intersectorally and be working with the French majority community as well. It also helps to leverage skills, resources, and creativity in others. And I think if you're anything like me, we've all been at tables where we have an idea and we think we're ready to implement something, but we sit down and have one last brainstorm with some people maybe we haven't in the past. And there's all kinds of new creative ideas that come forward. Not only the ideas come forward, but also someone would identify that they could contribute resources and maybe some of their time. So when we begin to work with other people, we explore the possibility of new ideas, creative ideas, the abilities for other people to contribute and lend their skills and talents, and also just in many cases too, it happens, financial resources and in-kind support happen when we open ourselves up to want to work with others. And finally, and I would say most importantly, that a lot of the work we do, so CASA is very much at the heart of trying to create long-term change in the communities. And so we're often trying to address complex problems. So whether it's Kathy, you working with the, the youth and you're offering your program, there are many systemic issues of why youth are maybe dropping out of school and are having struggles in their lives. So while we are offering programs to support our different population groups, we are also trying to work at long-term systemic strategies as a way to prevent this from happening more frequently in our communities. So a collaborative leader allows us to go out and work with other organizations and institutions as a way not only to develop a good program to support people who are vulnerable, who are suffering, who are in need at this very time, but also allows us to go out and work with organizations to look at why is this happening in the first place? What are some of the holistic and very systemic ways that we can begin to address this? So in 5, 10, 15 years, these issues may be happening, but a lot less frequent in our communities. There are many other examples that we'll just move on, but obviously there's many other examples that you guys all experience of why you want to collaborate with other people and not just work alone. So this slide and the next topic of conversation just builds on the same concept of the benefits of collaboration, but we are a minority English-speaking community in Quebec, and in all of the review of literature and research that's done on minority communities, collaborative leadership is a key development concept. It is identified over and over again as an important element for the success of any minority community, whether it's a linguistic, a cultural community, third world communities in third world countries. So I wrote out a few. These are things that, when I'm working with the networks, we often hear, some of the responses. So it's kind of based on personal experiences and some of the practices out in the field. So first of all, collaborative leadership fosters solidarity and a collective vision within our community. So as you guys know, in the work you're doing, if we can work with partners prior to starting on our programs to begin to build what's our collective vision for youth in our community, what's our collective vision for seniors, for children and families, what are we hoping to achieve in the next 5, 10 years collectively together? By creating that kind of vision, it creates a lot of solidarity, building of trust within our communities, and then it allows us to go out and work on our specific mandates where we're all working together to achieve a broader vision. So being a collaborative leader, one of the benefits within our community is we need to build a common vision of the English-speaking community. The minority community, the stronger that vision is, the better it is to be able to work with the majority community. Which leads to the second point, is that encourages greater connection to majority stakeholders and service providers. So as you guys know, there are many majority service providers or French-speaking institutions and organizations that they don't know our community as well. In fact, depending where you go in Quebec, there are some French-speaking organizations and institutions might say, well, I don't come across English-speaking clientele. I don't know where they are. There's no Anglophones in our region. We hear all those things. If we create a common vision, we're able to communicate that. It's a really engaging way for any majority to want to work with minority. Obviously, we've heard too of infighting, right? Obviously, within a minority community. By being a collaborative leader and constantly working to create that common vision, we can build trust within our minority community, and so that the majority community wants to work with us. If the majority feels that we're fractioned and that we're not working and we're not connected and we don't have a lot of solidarity together, it's harder for them to trust and want to work with us as a whole. Obviously, too, just generally demonstrates goodwill and openness. So for us to be able to partner and want to and collaborate with other people, if they see that we're good-willed and we're open individuals, and that we're not closed and set in our ways, we're open to trying new things, it's engaging for people to want to work with us. So it kind of comes down also to a bit of a personal and our personality, that we're trying to be outgoing and good-willed towards organizations and people. So that's one of the benefits when we try to adopt the collaborative mindset, that it instantly tells partners that we are open to understanding their situation. We want them to achieve their goals. We're looking kind of for win-win solutions. And we're there for the benefit of the entire community. Yes, for example, you may be bound to the mandate of CASA and your job descriptions, but at the end of the day, when we're going into partnerships, we also have to look at what is the mandates and the job functions of the people we're talking with and trying to collaborate with them, and what are the pressures and what are the needs and priorities they may have. And so we can put those two together as a way to advance forward in a collaboration. Obviously, it leads to that fourth one where it helps us see the whole picture of community vitality. We talked that a little bit earlier around being looking at a whole systems or a systemic viewpoint. I think we've all been in situations where we're sitting around a table having a discussions with organizations and individuals that come from different sectors, and they share their point of view. Our ability to collaborate and listen to them helps us slowly be able to see some of the other pressures, some of the other issues that we may not be integrating into our approach. And it begins us to see, well, I don't work in economic development, but when I'm in the health sector and I listen to economic development issues, I begin to see a broader picture and maybe some of the root causes of why there maybe is some, individuals in our communities that are more vulnerable. And it helps me look at maybe some of those grassroots solutions and strategies that might be important to address the reasons why some inequities or some vulnerabilities are occurring in our communities. So there are many other reasons, but from a minority community's perspective, here are just a few that we put forward. But it's definitely an important question to ask ourselves, is being a collaborative leader within our English minority community, what are those benefits? Again, understanding and constantly reminding ourselves of those benefits, they help us work through those times when it's hard and allows us to be more resilient in the work we're doing. Keeping those in mind, that when we come to the hard times, that the benefits outweigh the negatives. It just helps us work through in a more positive mindset with people. Okay, so that ends kind of like the second part of our agenda. And we're moving in already to the third part, which is really, we're going to look at 4 principles for effective collaboration. So the question here is what are some of those principles, values? What are the ways, how do we become a better collaborator? If we say, yes, I agree that the benefits are there, it's not easy to collaborate, and we're all on the spectrum of being more comfortable with change and our ability to want to partner with other individuals. And if we want to be more able and work as a better collaborative leader, what are some of those principles we need to be thinking about? So let's go to the first one. So just take a quick read through that. The first principle talks about mission impact before organizational growth. Now, if we just say that a few times, it's kind of a mind shift for many of us. It's about the mission impact before organizational growth. It means that our organizations and the growth of our organizations are important. But if we truly want to adopt a collaborative mindset, the development and growth of our communities and the impact we're having on individuals in our communities outweighs the importance of growth of our organizations. If we're constantly working on, for example, a CASA agenda, and that agenda is not integrated into the agendas of others, and we are moving forward regardless, we're trying to build our funding base, we're trying to build our credibility, all those things are important. But a true collaborative community leader puts the impact of helping and achieving growth in our communities as the #1 priority. We're putting our organizational needs aside, and we're entering into a space where we're looking at what is the best interest of the community at this particular time. So it says collaborative leaders adopt strategies that are aimed to achieve mission impact, not necessarily to stimulate organizational growth. So in the work you do, you could define and ask yourself the question is, what is your mission? Within your job description, within the work you're doing, what is your ultimate mission you're trying to achieve? That's the question good collaborative leaders ask themselves. Who do I need to collaborate and partner with to best achieve that mission? Versus, how do I build the image and credibility of CASA and the organization and the funding base in which I work for? Sometimes the two go hand in hand, but we're saying one has a priority over the other. Principle #1. Let's move on to principle #2. I'll let you just read that for one quick second. It says principle #2. The focus is on building relationship and trust with others, not necessarily trying to build mechanisms to control other people. That trust is the core principle of the work we're doing when we're trying to be a collaborative leader. Trust is a hard thing to develop because, as we know, when we move into collaborations and partnerships with other people, well, we have to give up a certain level of control. We have to share control. We have to be open and allowing some of the unknown and unexpected. It makes us feel a little bit more vulnerable in that case. And the way that we reduce our anxieties around the vulnerability and feel comfortable in the unknown and feel comfortable in the unknown and working with others that may have a different approach. There's a level of being uncomfortable. Building trust with those people is the key way to reduce our anxiety and vulnerabilities. And obviously the quote down below, he who does not trust enough will not be trusted. So the core concept here is all of us, if we want to adopt this collaborative leadership, is that if we're working with other people, and we all know this, when we build relationship with other people, it's much easier for us to accept and be open to looking at ideas that we never thought of that may be different from ours, because we just trust the person. You know, we know that they're in it for the best interest of the community. And I think we've all experienced this. where we have high trust in individuals. Quite often in my situation, when I've had high trust, almost it's less important to me the direction that we're going. I just trust those individuals. I just trust in the process. I let myself be open to the unknown. However, when it's the opposite, when I haven't built relationship with other people and I haven't built the trust, it's much harder for me to move into the unknown with them. And as a result, I'll try and put in different control mechanisms to limit the unknowns, to limit my vulnerabilities. So how do we build trust? Well, we're going to get into all that a little bit, but this is one of the core concepts of a good collaborative leader is all of us, what do we do in our day-to-day work when we're communicating and working with others? How do we constantly build trust and relationship with others? It's principle number 2. Principle number 3. You'll see on the left there, build constellation, not stars. So collaborative leaders don't strive to be the brightest star nor the expert. You know, we often prefer more of a constellation approach. So where we draw upon the leadership potential and expertise in others. So if you can see a little bit by the images behind us, if we're a collaborative leader, we see the sky above us with many stars. We see the constellation of stars versus seeing one big bright star and we're all following under that leadership. We all know there's nothing better than having an inspirational leader and we're willing to follow. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is that us as individuals, if we want to be a collaborative leader and adopt those core principles, we have to see ourselves as not trying to always be the expert, not trying to put ourselves forward in leading all the time, is that we need to provide opportunities for other people to build their leadership capacity. We need to allow youth and seniors and people in our programs, our community members, to have a strong voice and for their voice to be heard and for them to even be part of the program design and even in the implementation of our programming. We're building leadership skills in other people when we do that. And I know all you guys in your programming, you're very good at that. So this one might not be anything new to you. But for me, it's been something I've had to work on personally, because over time, and given my role in providing support to communities, you know, it's nice to feel like you're the go-to person. People come to you for advice and all those things, which I constantly happy to do that. However, I say to myself, if I truly want to adopt a collaborative leadership mindset, each and every time someone comes and asks me for advice, I need to think, are there other people in their region, in the province, that also has really good advice and maybe even more experience in this, and how can I refer them and build their network of people that they can build relationship with and get information from as well. So this is principle number 3, is that we strive as collaborative leaders, not necessarily to build 1 or 2 leaders where we're always trying to work underneath 1 or 2 leaders in our community, and that we see that leadership capacity is actually in everyone. And it's up to us to go out and find that and bring them in and make people feel important so that they can share their skills and talents. Build constellation and not stars. So this is it. This is the final one, because after 4 starts to get pretty long. So I'll just let you read that. This also flows with the other 3 principles, but it's humility and recognizing others. And it says humility is a hallmark of success, hallmark of successful leaders. They're not overly concerned with taking the credit and would rather recognize the contribution of others. And obviously, you guys, you can read the quote in the bottom, but it's so true. You know, it's amazing what we can accomplish in the world if we don't really care who gets the credit. Obviously, credit is important, you know, because we have funders that fund us, and it's important for organizations to be identified with our logos and those. But the core principle here is that what's driving us, it's not individual or organizational recognition. You know, in fact, it's opposite of that. The more that we can recognize other organizations' contributions, the more that we can recognize other individual contributions, the more those organizations and individuals want to work with us, the more that they're attracted to want to work with us, the more they see us as humble individuals, and we're there for the benefit of the whole, the benefit of the community. So that's principle number 4. It talks about our personality around being humble as individuals and the importance of recognizing the contributions of others and being careful about putting ourselves forward in our organizations to be recognized. So we'll just stop there. We're moving on to the very last part of the webinar. So those were the 4 principles, and we'll have a little chit chat after the session. And this is one of the final concepts I want to talk about. So just take a read through that because there's quite a bit of wording on the screen. So if you're interested, it's a Tamarack. So if you, that's a website and an organization in Canada that provides a lot of community development support to a lot of organizations, nonprofits across Canada. You'll see it referred to often as a partnership continuum, a collaboration spectrum. But if I can take you just from the left to the right, you'll see the arrow in the direction we're trying to go. I think if we do a show of hands or a thumbs up, we've all felt the competing phase, you know, where we felt like, well, for a lot of reasons that maybe weren't, you know, intentful, it just led to a variety of different circumstances. There's competition in our communities, you know, whether it's being for funding, for recognition, for clients, for public attention. So if any of you felt that, I mean, we all feel it. So anyone who works in community development, it's part of the phase of development that we would feel at different times. So if you feel that, it's not to be overly worried. It's a natural phenomenon that exists. But a collaborative leader recognizes this spectrum. And we work towards moving from more of a competitive kind of community of partners and individuals, all the way up to more collaborative, coordinated and collaborative. So if we move into the next phase, which is coexisting, I think many of you would say, well, I've also felt this before, where there are organizations, French and English organizations and individuals that are in our communities that, well, I know they're there, but I've had no real contact or relationship with them. I haven't really seen the need for collaboration with them. So maybe a good thing or a bad thing. And this is where we really get into fun, which is the 3rd phase, which is a collaborative leader is extremely networked. So I'm sure all of us on the call today do this as much as we can. We try to build relationships with a whole bunch of different people in our communities. And the way we do that is to share information and to network and say hi when we see them in places and be smiling and be polite. So if we ever want to move into more of a partnership phase, which starts at cooperation to cooperate, if you ever wanted to move into a collaboration with an organization or an individual, it obviously takes some kind of previous relationship for you to feel comfortable moving into it quickly and fast with them. So if we're well networked as a collaborative leader, and we've learned about the different organizations out there, and we have a fairly good established relationship with a variety of different sectors of people, it advances and increases our capacity to move into a more of a cooperative, collaborative stage. That's where you'd be more into, it says there, more discrete activities and projects. This is where a partnership, a formal partnership could be created. The collaboration spectrum also says, well, if you guys have ever been into the start of a partnership with an organization and you've had some previous relationship with them and it's been positive, at some point, we've all felt this if you've been working in the field for a few years, is that there is some level maybe of competition that still may exist or lack of trust in the group. And then we're moving forward in partnership, knowing that that exists, and we're constantly doing things that help nourish and move us forward in building trust and relationship as the partnership goes forward. Because ultimately we want to move to the right-hand side of this spectrum. If the community as a whole, if the Gaspé Coast as a whole, and the staff at CASA feel like in your work that you're doing, you're on the right-hand side of this spectrum, there's a good chance the majority of your community and your partnerships are healthy, and that the collectivity as a whole, the community as a whole, is moving forward in the right direction. So you're coordinating action plans with other organizations and sectors. And CASA is very well known and does a great job in that. There's nothing perfect. And I must say the arrow is straight, but as you guys know in the work we do, it's not straight. We will create an action plan and we think the partnership is rolling forward and there's a change of staff or there's an interpersonal conflict and we kind of back up a few steps. And in times, maybe the partnership or project has even gone on hold for a certain period of time or move forward without a particular partner. But if we're keeping in mind some of those development principles that we learned earlier and we're adopting them in our work, we try to move as a collaborative leader into the final two stages you'll see there, where we're actually building long-term action plans and a community vision with our partners that last over time. So it's not just punctual, it's long-term ongoing. So regardless of a turnover of a staff or a change of staff person, there's a really strong value base that's been created within the partnership. There's a lot of trust, and it's been ongoing for a long time, so it's a lot easier to integrate new people into the initiative. So I don't want to spend up too much time. The collaboration spectrum could be a really good talking piece where we actually share our experiences around where we might be in one of our projects. Do we have a project that we feel that we're maybe more fully integrated in the integration stage? Or are we just starting out and we're maybe at the cooperation stage? So it's just a nice framework that helps a collaborative leader be mindful and respectful of the different phases of collaboration and the different, and if we're applying the principles that we learned up top, we help move ourselves from the left hand to the right hand side of the spectrum.
It's funny because looking at all these boxes, like not any one project. I've been every box except for the first one. So I just looking at all of them, like it's amazing when you break it down like in boxes like that, like, because when you're at the point, you don't think of all these phases, but I've been at every one of these phases, really except for the first one where you compete, but you know.
And Kathy, you probably also like me, you know, you're in one of the phases, and then sometimes you advance forward, but also sometimes we're advancing backwards for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah, the smallest little glitch in your program or something doesn't turn out as where the boxes are written, where you have to like meet your TDRs and all of a sudden you're cut off at the knees and you have to take a left turn to make it work. Or maybe partners don't jump on board like you think. It could be anything from your team to your partners to your supervisor. It could be anything that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think by just looking at the spectrum, for me, it tells me when I take a step backwards in some kind of partnership, collaboration I have, this just knowing that these are the phases of development, I stay a little bit more positive and even, I think, resilient in knowing that, well, my job is to recognize where we are in these phases. And part of my job as a collaborative leader is to try and bring the partnership and the group constantly to the right-hand side of this spectrum.
Yeah, and I also think it has to do with experience and maturity. Like maybe a new person wouldn't know how to problem solve and end up where they got to go take a different route. Whereas if it's been like me, I've been there at CAS 7 years. It's not like a life term or anything, but it's long enough to know that when something happens, I know how to detour and make it work through another avenue, basically.
Absolutely. Jen, is there another slide or are we done? I'll just read the final quote out and then we can have a little discussion on this. So, successful collaboration requires a unique kind of leader, one that can align and integrate across organizations, right, that we talked about. And wow, did we ever talk about trust today? So effectively building relationships and trust. And just to kind of, you know, put in perspective, but we're also able to deal with high levels of frustration because it's constant. It can be very frustrating working in this mindset. So that kind of puts an end to the session. Also at the very end, we just wrote down here, we don't need to go through it now, but it talks about just some of the different elements that we talked about today and puts it into just to some phrases around what a collaborative leader is. So we'll give you the PowerPoint or the PDF and you can read through these and that. So, but I think that's it. So I guess we can stop recording and we can just open it up to some just fun discussion.